Kate and Alex met by chance. Their meeting took place during a summer conference in New York, where they both spoke from their universities. She lived in Chicago and he lived in Boston. Two cities, two different life stories. That evening they talked until morning. Both felt that this meeting was not accidental, so they exchanged numbers and promised to keep in touch. The first few weeks everything was great. They talked on the phone for hours, laughed at jokes and shared the most secret. A month later, Alex offered to come to Chicago for the weekend. Kate couldn't believe her luck when she saw him at the airport. They spent 2 perfect days together, strolling in parks and talking about the future. However, over time, the relationship became more and more complicated. The distance between them did not disappear, but only reminded of themselves more often. They agreed to meet once a month, but each visit was accompanied by emotional goodbyes and pain due to separation. Kate often noticed how Alex was late at work or did not immediately respond to her messages. "You're busy all the time," she reproached one evening on a video call. "That's not true," Alex objected. "I'm just working to secure our future." Jealousy on both sides intensified. Kate could not get rid of the thought that someone else was taking a place in Alex's life. And he began to suspect that Kate had become colder and more distant. Their quarrels grew into long silences, and the words that had previously warmed the soul hurt more. "Maybe we're just not made for that," Kate once said. Alex was silent. He didn't want to agree, but he couldn't deny that a long-distance relationship was exhausting them both. Alex's next visit to Chicago was completely different. They sat at the same table in the coffee shop, but remained silent. An unspeakable truth was in the air. Love was still chewing, but the distance left its scars. The next few days after the meeting in Chicago were like a lull before the storm. Alex returned to Boston, and hundreds of miles between him and Kate again. She felt that something had changed. Their calls became shorter, their answers were drier, and their long silences were filled with suspicions and doubts. One evening, Kate couldn't stand it. She dialed his number and, without waiting for the greeting, said, "Alex, tell me honestly. Do you still need this relationship?" At the other end of the line fell silence. Kate heard Alex sigh heavily. "Why are you asking that?" His voice sounded muffled. "Because I feel like we're both losing our sense. I don't want everything we've created to collapse because of the distance." Her voice trembled. Alex was silent for a few more seconds, and then replied, "Kate, I love you. But this distance, it kills me. I don't know how much longer I can do that." These words were like thunder in the clear sky. Kate squeezed the phone and said, barely holding back her tears, "And what should we do now? Just give up?" Alex didn't answer. Deep down, they both understood that their love had not disappeared, but distance turned every day into a test. Alex worked 10 hours a day to raise money and possibly move to Chicago, but Kate didn't know. She thought he was moving away, and to him that she no longer believed in them. A week later, Kate received a message from him, "I need some time to think about everything. That doesn't mean I'm leaving you. I just want to see if we can get over it together." Her heart fell. She read these lines dozens of times, trying to find at least a little hope in them. Time always seemed like a sentence in a relationship, and Kate was afraid that it was just the end, decorated with beautiful words. Weeks passed. They didn't write to each other. Kate walked around the city, remembering their meetings and the promises they made to each other. One day she came across the coffee shop where they were sitting for the last time and felt the memories captivating her. "If it's really the end," she said to her friend, "I don't know if I can love someone like that again." Meanwhile, Alex was sitting in his apartment looking at their joint photos. He was holding a plane ticket to Chicago and couldn't decide what to do next. Is our love strong enough to overcome this? Is she ready to hear me? He asked himself. The day of his decision was approaching. But will it be reconciliation or farewell? None of them knew the answer yet. Kate tried to distract her thoughts about Alex. She immersed herself in work, meeting with friends, but every time the phone notified of a new message, her heart froze, hoping to see his name. She didn't know anything about his plans and was afraid that their pause would be final. Meanwhile, Alex sat on a plane to Chicago, clutching a small envelope in his hands. His decision was not easy, but he realized that they deserved a chance. All these months of struggle, quarrels and despair could not be in vain. He decided to tell her everything, about his feelings, about his fears, and about the plans that he had so carefully hidden. Kate was returning home late at night when she noticed a silhouette at the door of her apartment. It was Alex. She stopped, not believing her eyes. "Alex? What are you doing here?" Her voice was faint, full of surprise and hope. Alex raised his head and smiled as he did when they first met. "I can't live like this anymore, Kate. I'm tired of distance. I'm tired of pauses and silence. I want to be with you." "But how?" She took a step towards her, because tears had already begun to come to her eyes. "I'm moving to work in Chicago," Alex replied, handing her an envelope. "I found a way to be closer to you. And if you still want it, we can start over." Kate looked at him in confusion. She imagined this moment so many times, but now that it has become a reality, she did not know what to say. "Why didn't you say anything before?" she finally whispered. "Because I was afraid you wouldn't wait. That one day you will just leave." His voice broke, but he continued. "But I can't lose you, Kate." Kate took the last step and hugged him. Her tears flowed down her cheeks and her hands were shaking. For the first time in a long time, they were close, without words and without the distance between them. "I thought you wouldn't come back," she whispered in his ear. Alex smiled and pressed her even harder. "I always come back to you." The following weeks were like a new beginning for Kate and Alex. Alex moved to Chicago, although it required a lot of effort from him, finding new housing, adapting to another office, and a constant internal struggle with doubts. Was it the right decision? He sometimes feared that their relationship could collapse not only because of the distance, but also because of the changes that came into their lives. Kate, for her part, tried to support Alex in everything. She helped him get in, looked for interesting places in the city where they could walk together, and tried to create home warmth for them. But something was still wrong. One evening, while they were sitting on the sofa in his new apartment, Alex stood up and nervously began to walk around the room. "Did you notice that we became different?" he suddenly asked. "What do you mean?" Kate tried to pretend she didn't understand. "You know?" Alex paused and took a deep breath. "When we were far away, I thought moving would solve all our problems. But we are still arguing about the little things. Sometimes it seems to me that we have become closer physically, but emotionally not." Kate was silent, looking at the floor. She felt it too, but she was afraid to admit it even to herself. The move, which seemed so long awaited and romantic, brought with it new difficulties. The distance between them was overcome, but now they had to learn to be together every day with real responsibilities, habits, and problems. "Do you regret moving?" she finally asked, barely audible. Alex approached her and sat down next to her. He took her hands in his and looked into her eyes. "No, I don't regret it. I just want us to be honest with each other. Loving at a distance is one thing, but loving next to you is quite another. We have to learn it together. I'm afraid that one day you'll realize it was a mistake," Kate said, with her voice shaking. "If we hide from problems, it will happen. But we can change that. After all, I didn't move here to give up." Alex hugged her and added softly, "Give us some time." Kate smiled through her tears and leaned against him. At this moment, she realized that love was not always like a fairy tale. This is struggle, compromise, and willingness to work on relationships every day. But the most important thing is the desire of two people to go together, despite all the difficulties. The following days they decided to spend differently. They started a common tradition. Every Friday, they cooked dinner together. On weekends, they went for a walk or watched old movies that they both loved. Alex tried to devote more time to Kate, and she, in turn, supported him in adapting to his new life. Their quarrels became rarer and their conversations deeper. Kate was no longer afraid to talk about her fears, and Alex finally felt that they both belonged to the same world. Months passed, and Kate and Alex finally began to find balance in their new life. Their relationship changed, becoming more mature and real. They understood that love is not only passion or romantic moments, but also the ability to support each other when it is difficult. However, the test still found them. One day Alex came home late. He was tired and silent. "You didn't even call that you would be delayed," Kate said, trying to hide her excitement about anger. "I was at the meeting," Alex replied dryly, taking off his jacket. Kate felt something pressing on her heart again. This silence, this alienation, it seemed to her that she had already seen it before, when they lived in the distance. "Alex, you're not the same as before. You are moving away from me again." Alex stopped abruptly and looked at her. "I work so that we have a common future. Why can't you understand it? Why do you always think something is wrong?" "Because I feel it." Kate raised her voice. "We both tried, but what if we are really different? What if we can't be together in this reality?" Kate's words hung in the air. Alex looked at her with pain, and then turned away. "You don't believe in us, Kate. Maybe you're right." That night was a turning point. They slept in different rooms, and in the morning they both acted as if nothing had happened. But there was a chasm between them again, which frightened both more than the distance of thousands of kilometers. One day, Kate met her friend for coffee. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, looking out the window. "I love him, but sometimes it seems that we are just holding on to something that has long been crumbled." "Love is always a risk," Kate, the friend, replied. "But you have to decide if you're willing to fight. Not for the past, but for the present." These words stuck in Kate's head. She realized that she and Alex were mired in fears and past grievances. That evening, she returned home and found Alex on the balcony. He sat with a cup of coffee and looked at the city at night. "We need to talk," she said. Alex nodded, not taking his eyes off the city lights. "I'm tired of these fights, Kate. I want everything to be as before. We can't get back what we had before, Alex. We have changed. But that doesn't mean everything is lost. I love you, but I can't always fear that we will lose each other." Alex finally looked at her. "I love you too," his voice was quiet but decisive. "It's just that sometimes I'm afraid that we won't have enough strength." "The strength can always be found if we really want it," Kate replied, squinting down. "The question is whether we both want it." They were silent for a few minutes, and then Alex took her hand. "I want to. But we need to learn to talk to each other, not hide behind silence or work." Kate smiled and put her head on his shoulder. It was just a step, but an important one. They didn't know what was waiting for them, new quarrels or new happiness, but this time they were ready to fight together. Weeks passed, and Kate and Alex gradually built a new version of their relationship. They tried to talk more, not just about work or plans for the weekend, but about what they really feel. Alex opened up to her for the first time in a long time, telling her how he was afraid of moving and that he still sometimes feels strange in Chicago. Kate, in turn, shared her fears about how often she thinks their happiness is too fragile. "We've been through so much, but we're still learning to live together," Alex once said, returning home after a hard day's work. "I think it's normal. The main thing is that we both want it," Kate replied, putting the dinner she had prepared on the table. The evenings were now calmer. They learned not to transfer their problems to the relationship. Alex no longer broke down because of work, and Kate stopped being silent about what was bothering her. Together they created small rituals, having dinner by candlelight at least once a week or going out of town for the weekend. But life, as always, presented new tests. One morning, Kate received a call from her boss. "We have an opportunity for you. It's a raise, but there's a nuance: you have to move to New York for half a year." Kate frozen. New York? This meant that everything would return to normal: distance, calls, separations. In the evening, she sat on the couch and nervously traced the edge of the sweater when Alex came home. Did something happen? He immediately noticed her absent look. "I was offered a promotion, but it's in New York." "For half a year," Kate said, trying to speak calmly. Alex silently sat next to him. "Do you want to go? This is a great opportunity for me, but I don't want to leave you again. I'm afraid it will destroy us." Her voice trembled. Alex took her hand and squeezed her fingers. "We've been through this, Kate. But now we are stronger. I won't tell you don't go because it's important to you. What about you? What about us? What if we can't do it this time?" Alex was silent for a moment, looking at their intertwined hands. "I believe in us. Now I know that the distance is only temporary. We did it then, and we will do it now. Half a year is not an eternity." Kate looked at him and saw in his eyes the same determination that once forced him to move to Chicago. Alex didn't want to let her go, but was ready to support her. "Do you really think so?" she asked. "I think we are more than the distance," he replied and smiled. This time, they were not afraid. They knew that love is not just about being physically close, but supporting and trusting each other, even if life is getting them apart again for a while. When Kate flew to New York, Alex took her to the airport and said only, "Come back to me." "I will wait. I will definitely come back," she replied and hugged him as if for the last time, although they both knew that this was just the beginning of a new test. This time they believed that their relationship could stand everything. And although the end of their story has remained open, both knew that true love is when you are ready to fight, even when the whole world surrenders against you. The first few weeks in New York were like a marathon for Kate. The new job required full dedication: meetings, presentations, reports. Sometimes she even forgot to have lunch. Alex supported her as best he could. They talked via video call every night, sometimes falling asleep right during the conversation. "You look tired," Alex once said, looking at her screen as she was drinking coffee already during their call. "It's just the first weeks. Then everything will stabilize," she replied, trying to smile. "Don't forget yourself, Kate. I know what you are like: you want to do everything perfectly, but sometimes you have to be able to stop." His words warmed the heart, but at times Kate felt that these calls were more like a rescue than real communication. She missed him, but tried not to show it. Alex, for his part, also felt lonely. His days became monotonous: work, gym, evenings at home, where every corner of the apartment reminded him of Kate. He started working late so as not to think about how much she was missing. One evening, Kate called a little later than usual. Alex had already started to worry when he finally saw her face on the screen. "I'm sorry it's so late. I had a very important meeting today. But you know what? I think I might be left here for a few more months." "This is a huge opportunity, Alex." He was silent for a few seconds. "A few more months? You said it was only half a year." "Yes, but it could change my career. You understand, right?" Alex tried to smile, but the smile came out forced. "Yes, I understand." But inside, he felt something break. He tried to support Kate, but those words seemed to take the ground from under his feet. A few more months. Even more lonely nights, even more conversations through screens. "Are you not happy?" Kate asked, noticing his reaction. "I'm happy for you. It's just, sometimes I feel like we're starting to distance ourselves again. We said we would stand it. That our love is stronger than distance." "Yes, but sometimes love is not just words, Kate. It's to be near. It feels like you're not alone." She was silent. It hurt her to hear this, because deep down she knew that Alex was right. The distance again began to destroy what they were so hard to restore. A few weeks later, Alex decided to come to New York for the weekend. He didn't tell Kate, he wanted to make a surprise. He imagined their meeting, she would be happy, she would give up all things, and they would spend these 2 days together. But when he arrived at her office late at night, he saw Kate in the window of the meeting room. She sat next to a colleague, laughed at jokes, and looked like she had long forgotten about fatigue and distance. Alex felt his heart tighten. He didn't go inside. I just stood on the street, looking at her through the glass. Why am I even here? He asked himself quietly. The next morning, Kate received a message from him. I was in New York. I wanted to make a surprise, but I realized that I no longer know what place I occupy in your life. Maybe we're both just afraid to let go of something that doesn't work anymore. Kate has read these words dozens of times. She was gripped by fear. She tried to call Alex, but he didn't answer. For the first time in a long time, she felt something really breaking. She went to Chicago the next day. Knocked on the door of his apartment, but no one opened it. It seemed to her that a little more and she would lose it forever. Standing at the door, she whispered, "Alex, please, give us another chance." Did he hear her? Will he open the door for her? Will they be able to find their way to each other, as they have done so many times before? The answer was still unknown, but now Kate knew one thing. Love can be lost not only because of distance, but also because both of them stopped fighting for it. Kate stood at the door, her hands shaking with cold and anxiety. She didn't know how long she would wait, but she definitely decided that she wouldn't leave until Alex gave her an answer. Time dragged on unbearably long, and when she was almost desperate, the door finally opened. Alex stood in front of her. He looked tired, but his eyes were full of emotions that he was trying to hide. "What are you doing here, Kate?" he asked quietly. "I couldn't just leave it, Alex. I know I made a mistake. I was obsessed with work and forgot what was really important to me." Her voice trembled, but she looked him straight in the eye. Alex was silent, looking at her. "Do you think you can just come here and fix everything?" His words sounded sharp, but there was no anger in them. Just pain. "I came to New York, Kate. I saw you, and realized that maybe I'm just not where I should be in your life." "That's not true," she almost exclaimed. "You are all that matters to me. I'm confused, yes. But I love you. And if you still have some more feelings for us, we can fix everything." Alex ran his hand over his face and sighed heavily. He was exhausted. Distance, doubts, and uncertainty destroyed their relationship for too long. But seeing Kate here, in front of him, as she asks for another chance, made his heart flutter. "Do you really want this?" he asked softly. "Because I can't fight alone anymore." Kate came closer and gently took his hand in hers. "I'm not asking you to fight alone. I want us to fight together. I am ready to change. I am ready to work on our relationship, because I know what we have is worth everything." Alex looked at her silently, and then slowly hugged her. These embraces were different, full of pain, but also hope. They both understood that there was still a lot of work ahead. That love alone is not enough if you are not able to listen and support each other. But now they were ready to try again. Kate stayed in Chicago for the next few days. They spoke a lot, honestly and openly, like never before. Alex told how he felt unnecessary in her life when she was busy with work all the time. Kate admitted that she was afraid of losing her career opportunity and his at the same time, and because of this, she was confused. "You know," she said one evening, when they were sitting on the balcony of his apartment, wrapped in blankets, "I don't want to live as if love is something temporary anymore. Maybe sometimes you have to stop and choose what is really important." Alex smiled and looked at her. "I always believed in us. It just sometimes seems that life is testing us for strength." "So what?" Keith whispered. "We withstood this test. Alex thought for a moment and then hugged her. "We're still on our way. But this time together." The end of their story was still undetermined. Whether there would be a new distance ahead, new doubts or new challenges, no one knew. But now Kate and Alex have learned the main thing: love requires not only feelings, but also effort. And most importantly, they were both ready to fight for what they had. The following months were a real test for Kate and Alex, but this time they approached them in a different way. After returning to New York, Kate agreed with the management that she would be able to work remotely several days a week and fly to Chicago more often. She no longer wanted to make a career at the cost of their relationship. Alex, for his part, stopped keeping his feelings to himself. If something worried him or weighed him down, he immediately talked about it. They learned to listen to each other without insults and accusations, with patience and love. One day, when Kate arrived in Chicago for the weekend, Alex met her at the airport with a large bouquet of lilies, her favorite flowers. "You're starting to spoil me," she smiled, taking flowers and looking into his eyes. "You deserve it," he replied and kissed her on the forehead. This weekend they spent outside the city, renting a small house by the lake. No phones, no work, only the two of them and the silence of nature. In the evening, sitting on the shore and watching the sunset, Alex suddenly said, "You know, I thought that when you went to New York, we would lose each other." "I was scared too," Kate replied. "But sometimes it seems to take distance to understand how important what we have is." Alex took out a small velvet box from his pocket and slowly opened it. Inside, there was a thin silver ring with a tiny diamond. Kate hated her breath. "I'm not asking you to marry me right now," Alex said quietly. "But I want this ring to remind you, I'll always be there, even when life tries to separate us again." Kate's eyes were filled with tears. She stretched out her hand for Alex to put the ring on her finger. "I will never forget this moment," she whispered. "You are the best thing that happened to me." The following years were not perfect. There were quarrels, there were misunderstandings, there were difficult moments when both wanted to leave everything. But each time they found the strength to return to each other. Alex was building a career in Chicago, and Kate returned to the city that became their home after completing the project in New York. One evening they were sitting on the same balcony where they once almost lost each other. Kate, wrapped in a blanket, looked at the starry sky and suddenly said, "Do you remember how we thought the distance would destroy us?" Alex smiled and hugged her. "We turned out to be stronger than the distance? Stronger than circumstances. Do you think it will always be like this?" Kate asked, looking up at him. "I don't know what will happen tomorrow. But I know we'll get through it together." Kate smiled and leaned against him. They did not know what awaited them ahead, but one thing was certain: now they had learned to love not only in moments of joy, but also in moments of silence, pain and uncertainty. Because true love is not a promise of an ideal future, but a choice to stay close, no matter what happens. After many trials and years, when Kate and Alex found balance in their relationship again, their lives began to acquire new shades of peace and happiness. They lived in Chicago in a small but cozy apartment. And while work still took up much of their time, they learned not to put it above their relationship. One spring morning, Kate was habitually making coffee in the kitchen when Alex approached her with a pile of documents in his hands and a strange sparkle in his eyes. "What is it?" she asked, looking at him suspiciously. "It's not documents for work, if that's what you're talking about," he said, smiling. "These are plans for the house. Our house." Kate put down the cup of coffee and picked up the papers. There was a large house with a terrace, a garden, and even a place for a future studio. "Alex, is it serious?" Her voice trembled with surprise and admiration. "I thought we deserved it a long time ago. This will be our space, our place where we can start a new chapter of life." He took her hands and added, "I know we are not perfect, but I want to build the future with you." Kate's eyes were filled with tears. All those years, quarrels, distance, doubts, they made them stronger. Now, when Alex stood in front of her, dreaming of living together in a house where every corner would be full of their memories. She realized they had not gone their way for nothing. "Are you really sure?" she asked, barely holding her emotions. "I'm sure of us, Kate. That's the most important thing," Alex replied. Building a house became a new challenge for them, but also a new hobby. Kate chose the interior, looking through magazines and catalogs for hours, and Alex was busy with planning and finances. They sometimes argued, but learned to listen to each other. "I want a bright bedroom with large windows so that the sun wakes us up in the morning," Kate said, flipping through the design pages. "And I dream of a workshop in the basement to finally take up my hobby," Alex added with a smile. "Okay, but if there is a workshop, then I want a corner for the garden on the terrace." "Agreed," Alex nodded. Months of construction turned their life together into an even greater adventure. Finally, in August, their house was ready. They moved into it together, holding hands and laughing as they set up the furniture. One evening, when the sun was slowly setting behind the horizon, they were sitting on the terrace, drinking tea and looking at the new garden, which Kate had already managed to arrange. "We did it," she said softly, leaning against Alex. "I think all of our problems were necessary for us to understand what we really want," he replied, hugging her. "And what is it?" "You, I, and our house." Kate smiled and looked into his eyes. "Thank you for not letting me go then. Thank you for always believing in us." Their story may never be perfect. In life there is always room for new challenges and difficulties. But now they knew for sure that together they could overcome everything. True love is when two people choose each other again and again, despite all obstacles. Under the starry sky, they sat on the terrace of their new house, holding hands and silently enjoying the silence. And this time no distance, no doubt, could be between them.